The moor stretched, vast and empty, a desolate expanse that seemed to go on forever. The wind howled across the landscape, carrying with it a sense of foreboding. The ground was uneven, dotted with patches of heather and gorse, and the occasional outcrop of rock. It was a place that felt untouched by time, ancient and eternal. A swathe of green and brown under a sky that held the constant threat of rain. The clouds hung low, heavy with moisture, casting a pall over the land. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying vegetation. It was a place that seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something to happen. And then, the mist. It rolled in silently, creeping over the moor like a living thing. It clung to a specific area, a thick, unnatural fog that seemed to have a life of its own. It was as if the mist was drawn to this place, compelled to linger and obscure. The locals called it the striding place. They knew to avoid it. The signposts were old and weathered, their warnings barely legible, but the message was clear: stay away. The path through the moor was treacherous, and the mist only made it more so. Legends whispered of figures within the mist, pacing endlessly, shadows that moved with purpose, yet never seemed to reach their destination. Some said they were the spirits of those who had lost their way, doomed to wander the moor for eternity. Others believed they were something else entirely, something darker and more malevolent. They spoke of those who ventured too close, vanishing without a trace. Stories of travellers who had ignored the warnings, only to disappear into the mist, never to be seen again. Their fates were unknown, but their absence was a stark reminder of the dangers that lurked within the striding place. The striding place was a place of mystery, of fear. It was a place of the lost, a place where the line between the living and the dead seemed to blur, where the past and present coexisted in a perpetual state of unease. It was a place that called to the curious and the foolhardy, a place that promised secrets and danger in equal measure. Ella remembered the fear. She was just a child when her brother, Samuel, disappeared. He had been playing near the edge of the mist. He had vanished into the fog. Days turned into weeks. Hope dwindled. Then, one morning, he reappeared. He was different, distant. His eyes held a strange, unsettling light. He spoke of the fog, of figures that walked within. He spoke of whispers on the wind. Years passed. The village barely remembered Samuel's disappearance, but Ella never forgot. The memory haunted her. She had returned, drawn back to the village by her past. The striding place still held its grip on the land. It called to her, a siren song of sorrow and mystery. She would uncover the truth of that place. She would find Samuel, the real Samuel, lost somewhere within the fog. The air grew cold as she approached the edge of the mist. It seeped into her clothes, a damp, chilling touch. The fog swirled, an opaque wall before her. Fear, sharp and cold, gripped her heart. She hesitated, then taking a deep breath, she stepped forward. The mist enveloped her. The world outside vanished, swallowed by the grey. Silence. Only the sound of her own breath. And then she heard them. Whispers, faint at first, then growing louder. They swirled around her, voices without bodies, speaking of forgotten things. They spoke of sorrow, of loss, of endless wandering. They tugged at her, urging her deeper into the mist. She pressed on, her fear battling with a strange sense of curiosity. Faces in the grey. Shapes began to form in the mist. Tall figures, their outlines blurred and indistinct, pacing back and forth. Their movements were stiff, unnatural. They were shadows, remnants of something lost. As she drew closer, faces flickered within the grey, pale, drawn, their eyes hollow and lost. They were trapped, their sorrow etched onto their features. A twisted reflection. Then she saw him. He stood among the figures, his back to her. His posture, the way he held his head, it was undeniably Samuel. But something was wrong. His shoulders slumped with a weight that seemed to age him. His hair, once bright and lively, hung limp and dull. He turned and she saw his face. It was Samuel, but twisted, his features etched with a deep, unending sadness. The embrace of the fog. The fog was not just a natural phenomenon. It was a living, breathing entity that seemed to have a mind of its own. It moved with purpose, wrapping itself around the trees and the ground, creating an almost impenetrable barrier. The air was thick with moisture and the visibility was reduced to mere feet. It was as if the world had shrunk, leaving only the immediate surroundings visible. He moved towards her, his eyes filled with a terrible recognition. Each step he took was heavy, as if the fog itself was trying to hold him back. The closer he got, the more he could see the fear in her eyes. She stood there, frozen, unable to move, as if the fog had rooted her to the spot. He reached out, his hand cold and damp. The fog clung to his skin, making it feel like he was reaching through a veil of ice. His fingers trembled as they extended towards her, the distance between them feeling like an eternity. "Ella," he whispered, his voice a hollow echo of the brother she remembered. The sound seemed to be swallowed by the fog, making it barely audible. Yet it was enough to break through her paralysis. She blinked, her eyes wide with shock and recognition. "Don't stay. Leave this place." His voice was urgent, filled with a desperation that she had never heard before. It was as if he knew something she didn't, something that made staying here a fate worse than death. But it was too late. The fog had already begun to work its way into her mind, filling her thoughts with a strange, comforting numbness. She could feel it seeping into her, just as it had seeped into him. The fog had seeped into her, just as it had seeped into him. It was a slow, insidious process, one that she hadn't even noticed until it was too late. Now it was a part of her, just as it was a part of him. It whispered promises of peace, of ending her search. The whispers were soft, almost soothing, like a lullaby that promised rest and relief from all her troubles. It was tempting, so very tempting, to just give in and let the fog take her. She was tired of searching, tired of the pain. Every step she had taken, every moment she had spent looking for answers had drained her. The fog offered an escape, a way out of the endless cycle of pain and despair. She reached out, her hand meeting his. In that moment she felt a connection, a bond that went beyond the physical. It was as if the fog had brought them together, binding their fates in a way that neither of them could escape. And as their hands clasped, she knew that they were both lost to the fog, forever entwined in its embrace. Lost and found. In the heart of the misty forest, where the fog hung thick and heavy, she wandered aimlessly. The air was cold, and the silence was only broken by the occasional rustle of leaves. She felt an eerie presence around her, as if the forest itself was alive and watching her every move. The figures closed in, their forms solidifying around her. They seemed to emerge from the very essence of the fog, their shapes becoming clearer with each passing moment. She could feel their eyes on her, a mix of curiosity and something more sinister. She saw their faces, their eyes filled with a strange mixture of pity and acceptance. It was as if they knew her, understood her plight, and yet there was no malice in their gaze. Instead, there was a haunting familiarity, a silent acknowledgement of shared sorrow. The whispers grew louder, swirling around her, pulling her deeper into the fog. They spoke in hushed tones, their words indistinguishable, but their intent clear. They were calling to her, beckoning her to join them in their eternal wanderings. She was one of them now, lost in the mist. The realization hit her like a cold wave, but there was no fear, only a strange sense of belonging. She had become part of the fog, a shadow among shadows, forever drifting in the endless mist. She would walk with them, forever searching, forever lost. The forest had claimed her, and she had surrendered willingly. Together they moved as one, a silent procession of lost souls, bound by the fog and their shared fate. And in the depths of her despair, she felt a strange sense of peace. She had found Samuel. His presence was a beacon in the darkness, a reminder of what she had lost and what she had found. Their reunion was bittersweet, a moment of clarity in the endless fog. But in finding him, she had lost herself. The fog had taken her, but it had also given her something in return. She was no longer alone, but she was no longer the person she once was. The mist had changed her, and there was no going back. As the fog begins to lift, the dense shroud of mist that had enveloped them slowly dissipates, revealing the hidden truths of the striding place. The protagonist stands in the heart of the forest, the figures around her now fully materialized, their once indistinct forms now hauntingly clear. The whispers that had guided her through the fog transform into coherent voices, each one distinct and filled with emotion. They speak of old wounds and forgotten stories, of a family torn apart by secrets and the supernatural forces that bind them to this place. The protagonist's heart pounds as she listens, each revelation more shocking than the last. She learns that the striding place is not just a physical location, but a spiritual crossroads, a liminal space where the past and present intertwine. It is here that the souls of her ancestors, including Samuel, are trapped, bound by an ancient curse that has haunted their family for generations. The forest, once a place of eerie silence, now hums with the energy of these revelations. The protagonist sees visions of her ancestors' lives, their struggles, and the choices that led them to this eternal wandering. She realizes that the fog had not just taken her, but had also offered her a chance to understand and break the cycle. In a moment of clarity, the protagonist faces the ultimate truth. The striding place is a reflection of her family's unresolved pain, a manifestation of their collective sorrow and guilt. To free herself and her ancestors, she must confront these emotions, accept her family's past, and find a way to bring peace to the restless spirits. With a deep breath, she steps forward, addressing the figures around her with newfound determination. She speaks words of forgiveness and understanding, acknowledging the pain and mistakes of the past, but also expressing hope for redemption. As she does, the fog lifts completely, and the forest is bathed in a soft, ethereal light. The figures around her begin to fade, their expressions of sorrow replaced with ones of gratitude and relief. The curse is broken, and the spirits are finally free. The protagonist stands alone in the now clear forest, the weight of her family's history lifted from her shoulders. She feels a profound sense of peace and closure, knowing that she has not only found Samuel, but has also set her family free from their eternal wandering. The striding place, once a symbol of despair, is now a place of healing and renewal. And as the protagonist walks away, she knows that she carries with her the strength and wisdom of her ancestors, ready to face whatever the future holds. As dawn breaks, the protagonist sits on the edge of the forest, her gaze fixed on the now clear striding place. The events of the night swirl in her mind, a tapestry of revelations and emotions. The forest, once a labyrinth of fog and shadows, now stands serene and silent, a witness to the end of a generational curse. She reflects on the journey that brought her here, the whispers that guided her, and the faces of her ancestors now at peace. The weight of their stories, their pain, and their redemption settles in her heart. A bittersweet reminder of the power of understanding and forgiveness. The protagonist knows that while the curse is broken, the striding place will forever be a part of her. It is a symbol of her family's past, a testament to their struggles and resilience. She feels a deep connection to the land, an unspoken bond that ties her to the spirits who once wandered here. Yet, a hint of mystery lingers. The forest, though clear, still holds secrets, its ancient trees whispering tales of the past. The protagonist senses that there are stories yet to be discovered, lessons still to be learned. She embraces this uncertainty, knowing that it is a part of the journey. With a final glance at the striding place, she rises, feeling the strength and wisdom of her ancestors flowing through her. The forest, now a place of healing and renewal, stands as a testament to the power of confronting the past and finding peace. As the protagonist walks away, the first rays of sunlight pierce through the trees, casting a golden glow on the path ahead. She knows that the striding place has changed her, and she carries with her the legacy of her family's history, ready to face whatever the future holds with courage and grace. The journey has ended, but the story continues. A never-ending dance between the past and the present, the known and the unknown. And in that dance, the protagonist finds her place, a bridge between worlds, a keeper of stories, and a bearer of hope.